Heroes, those who serve. We can't imagine what goes through the minds of these brave warriors, but we've got one here today who was wounded terribly in battle against a force in Iraq called al-Qaeda. And Jason Redman doesn't want any pity from anybody. He's got a sign that says, look, when you see me, I don't want any sympathy. But he's written a book called The Trident, The Forging and reorientation of a Navy SEAL. It's quite a story of valor. So it's a pleasure to welcome right now to the 700 Club our next guest. He's the author of this book, Lieutenant Jason Redman.
In 2007, Navy SEAL Lieutenant Jason Redman and his team were battling al-Qaeda in Iraq. During a firefight, Jason got shot in his left arm.
I was turned trying to address that arm wound when I took a round from the right side that caught me in the face.
Jason knew he was bleeding out as he felt the life leaving his body.
I called out to God and I said, hey, give me strength to go home. And in that moment, I felt like I had strength.
In his book, The Trident, Jason shares how the extraordinary devotion from his wife and kids brought him safely home.
Well, please welcome to the 700 Club retired Navy SEAL Lieutenant Jason Redman. Jason, I read this book, and it's fascinating. You were in a firefight against al-Qaeda as a SEAL. You were a Navy SEAL. How come you got an engagement against al-Qaeda? Were you expecting that to come off?
On that mission, yes. I mean, in that area where we were working outside of Fallujah, it was a very big al-Qaeda and insurgent stronghold, and that night we were going after a high-level leader. So every time we had gone into that area, we had gotten into firefights, and we fully expected that night another one.
Well, the thing opened up pretty badly. And as I understand, you felt they'd shot your arm off.
I did. The first rounds, we walked into an ambush situation. Two PKM machine guns had us in a crossfire, and the first one stitched across my body armor and took 2 rounds in my left elbow. It deadened all the nerves. My arm caught on my gear, so when I reached over, I couldn't feel it. So in that moment, I actually thought my arm had been shot off.
So when they finally rescued you, said, bring my arm around, go back and find my arm, but you really had it attached.
Yes.
But another round caught you in the face.
It did. We very limited points of cover where we walked into that ambush. So I got up to try and move back to my guys. Said there was a tractor tire about 15 yards behind me, and I turned to try and make it back to that tire. And another enemy fighter engaged me, and the round caught me in front of the ear and traveled through my face, taking off my nose and knocking me unconscious.
Well, how many surgeries did you have to undergo when they brought you back?
37.
Are you serious?
Yes,
37 surgeries. Well, you were so hideous that people turned their faces away from you. Did you have a hole in where that round had gone through?
I did. A lot of infection problems. It's common with warriors that go through them. So there was a little bit left of my nose, but as we went through, they kept having to cut more and more away until finally, at one point, I had nothing left. I just had a hole, and I had to wear a patch as I went around, and then, you know, the long process of being put back together.
What did you feel in your heart? Did you feel abandoned or, you know, ashamed? Or what went through your mind? Anger?
In that moment when I was laying there dying?
Yeah.
Anger at first. Angry that I had allowed myself and my men to get in that position. Anger at the thought that these vicious fighters were going to take, have ended up and have the satisfaction of taking my life. And then after that, I accepted the fact that I was going to die in that moment. I could physically feel it. And in that moment, I was sad. I thought about my family. I thought about my children, and that I would never see my daughters grow up and my son grow up. And I called out to God. I said, Lord, I need strength to come home.
Tell us about your wife. She seems like a lovely person. You wrote about her in your book. There's a great deal of love. What did she have to go through?
You know, our military wives out there, it's amazing, or spouses, it's amazing what they go through, especially for individuals that are on the front lines. I mean, the communication is poor at times, so they don't know what they're doing, and a lot of times, like I tried to protect her.
You said it was an 80% divorce rate. Is that?
That is average, especially in special operations.
Average is 80%?
Yes, sir.
You can't get much more extreme than that. 80% divorce? The wives just can't take it.
I think sometimes they don't understand what they've gotten themselves into. I also think sometimes husbands, the guys out there, may not do a good enough job of trying to, when they're home and being there for their families. It's not just a job, it is a lifestyle, and it takes a lot to balance that.
You were thinking about your unit, weren't you, when you were home? You were thinking about the guys at the battle and all that. I mean, you weren't thinking about your wife as much as you should be?
Well, you have to compartmentalize. I mean, the second I thought about my wife and children, everybody has their own ritual. Mine, I thought about them. I had a little slideshow I'd watch of them right before I went out for a mission. And once that was done, it was go time. And you could not really think about your family while you were out there fighting the enemy. That was, it was a distraction. You had to focus on what was going on. And I think for a lot of us, myself included, I accepted the fact that I may not come home the second I stepped out that door. And I think you had to think that way in order to be effective.
The SEALs are an incredible group. I had some SEALs from SEAL Team 6 working for us here. They're wonderful people. That's a hellish course, isn't it, getting through that? You went through Hell Week, you went through all the rest of the stuff being a SEAL. You were actually you were an officer and then you went through the SEAL? Is that training? Have I got it right?
I was actually enlisted when I went through SEAL training, and I spent 10 years as a SEAL enlisted member. Got picked up for a commissioning program and became a SEAL officer. And it's a very tough community to be a leader in, because you have to make the right decisions and you have to set the example with your men. And the book is a lot about that. My book it's much more a journey of leadership than anything else, coming to understand what it is to be a good leader.
In your book, it was kind of, well, I'm not quite sure I'm the man. I'm not quite sure I'm good enough to do this. I mean, there was all this doubt in your mind. Is that right?
Yes, sir. And I think everybody has doubt, and it's how we act on those doubts. I think it's humbling ourselves and coming to understand, you know, how to take care of people, how to look at people, how to make those right decisions, how to trust the people around you.
You look pretty good now. The surgeons did a right nice job.
Well, thank you, sir.
I was expecting some disfigured soul, but they fixed you up pretty good. Do you have pain? And do you have pain in your arm and face ongoing?
My face is fairly numb. I don't have too much pain in my face. My arm still bothers me. I try and do as much as I can. I try and work out. I still try and do things. I think with any of our wounded and disabled veterans, you know, you may have a disability, but you figure out how to work around it. You figure out how to do things, and that's what my nonprofit is all about.
You kept saying, I can't quite get enough, you know, flexibility in my arm to handle the training. I mean, like, you wanted to get back in there regardless of your wounds.
I did. I think for all of us, I mean, I had laid out a path. I think everybody in life has this path that they think is the path that they're going to go down. And obviously God sometimes has different paths for us. So when I was initially wounded, my thought was, I want to get back. I want to get back to my unit. I want to finish my career. I had hoped that someday I could have commanded a SEAL team. Obviously, God had different plans. And now, you know, I'm helping other wounded warriors. I'm getting out and trying to motivate and inspire people and talk about leadership.
You know, I have some doubts about this whole Iraqi thing. I'm not sure we should have gone in there. And the same thing with Afghanistan. And I hear of these people being torn to pieces, of IEDs blowing off and their limbs taken off. And what's happened to you? Was it worth it? Did we do a good thing as a nation on that deal?
Absolutely, I believe so. And the reason why is because, and you're seeing it now, you know, no matter what people believe, there is true evil in this world. And al-Qaeda is a proponent of that evil, and that has manifested itself into ISIS. And if we did not fight it there, eventually it will end up on our shores. And I do think that our government has made some mistakes in how they are fighting this war, and they have allowed, you know, there was a period of time that we had pressure on the enemy, and that war comes at a cost, and I have felt that cost, and other warriors out there have experienced that cost, both physical and invisible. But the problem is, left unchecked, evil will flourish. And we are facing real evil. You know, Muslim extremism is a problem, and we have to stand up and fight against it. It is an ideological threat that we are facing. And unfortunately, there is no amount of education that's going to change these extremists' view. They want to wipe us off the map. And unfortunately, sometimes the only solution there is combat, to go forth and try and take these people out. And I'm proud of that service because I saw that level of barbarian, you know, this brutality that was in Iraq, and I'm watching it continue today.
Your suffering was worthwhile then, and you suffered a lot.
Unequivocally.
Yeah.
I just hope the American people, they need to realize, you know, that this is real, and it continues today, and we can't just hide from it. You know, we probably will have to send more people to combat this.
Commander-in-Chief, it doesn't look like he wants to name the evil.
I agree. I have problems with that.
You do?
Know? I do.
Well, you had something here from Secretary Gates, a preface to this book, commenting you, and it's a fabulous journey. Your wife, is she good with all that you've gone through? What's that thing in your hospital? You had a sign of, say, your hospital bed. What was it? Don't feel sorry for me. How'd it go?
It said, attention to all who enter here. If you're coming in this room with sadness or sorrow, don't bother. You know, the wounds that I receive, I got in a job that I love, doing it for people that I love, defending the freedom of a country that I deeply love. You know, this room is all about optimism, intense rapid regrowth, positive energy. You know, if you're not prepared for that, go elsewhere.
So that sign went viral, and they picked it up. They have a plaque in the Naval Hospital now.
Yes, sir. When I left the hospital, I took it off the door and brought it home, but I felt like it wasn't mine to keep. I may have written it, but that is the spirit of our warriors. And bigger than that, I feel like it's the spirit of America. That spirit made America what it is. So I was invited to meet President Bush in the White House, and I asked him to sign it, and then we had it framed, and I gave it back to the hospital. And it now hangs in the middle of the wounded ward. And to this day, I still have warriors who will tell me, I can't tell you how much that motivated and inspired me. I'd roll by it going to a surgery, and I thought, yeah, absolutely. This is where we're at.
Jason, you're an inspiration to all of us. And this book just came out, by the way. This is the softback edition. The hardback has been out for a while. Trident, you might find it, if you want to know what's going on in our world, read the story of a real hero. It's called Trident, wherever books are sold. Jason Redman, God bless you. It's wonderful to meet you. I'm honored to have you here.
Hey, thank you, sir. I'm honored to be here.